unite the population in a manner that was never expected. I'm one who believes that we should exhaust all systems, all methods of having peaceful change. But if peaceful change is impossible, let me tell you, revolution is the language of the unheard. And it can happen. Let us not cheat ourselves that this country is immune. I was intimately involved in the attempt at making peace in the year 2007, 2008. But for the intervention of the international community, this country was descending into civil war. And once again, and I traveled this country, I traveled in this informal settlements in this city, the anger is palpable. You take a taxi, you take a boda, and they want to have a conversation with you.
Everybody wants to talk about it.
And they are telling you, we are angry, what can we do?
Yeah.
And somehow, if you look at our parliament, which is neutered, it speaks not about any of these things. They are going to spend millions of shillings now in the process of impeachment of the deputy president, going around the country to ask us whether the deputy president is guilty or not guilty. Who among them is without sin? The sins that they are accusing the deputy president of, each one of them, almost without exception. I would have wanted my parliament to discuss the economic situation. I would have wanted to hear my parliamentarians talking about the lack of salaries or proper remuneration for different cadres of the society. I do not hear that. Instead, they are defending, they are fighting about the Constituency Development Fund, which I don't think they should manage. That is not their duty. And when you walk around Nairobi or any part of the country, you see the poster of a member of parliament, constructed courtesy of this parliament. That is our tax money. Should not bear the image of an individual. It is sad, my sister. It is sad, Eric, that we are in this space. But I can guarantee you, if it is not in our lifetime, if this continues, this country is going to pay. And that could be the revolution that will change things. That if we are not careful, it could become worse before it becomes better. And I said in my last letter, the first letter in 2023 to Mr. Odinga and the president, then I told them, let us paddle this water while it is knee deep. Because when it gets to our necks, we will sink, all of us. All of us. Mtego wa panya huingia waliomo na wasiokuwemo.
Do you think they get it? Because the same way you go around the country, it's the same way these political leaders, especially the top political leaders, if you talk about William Ruto, Raila Odinga, Musalia Mudavadi, Kalonzo Musyoka, they have traversed this country. They have engaged with people, different socioeconomic backgrounds, different. They have listened and talked to people. Is it possible that they don't get the message?
Sometimes I think they don't get it, and if they get it, they don't care. But remember, your typical Kenyan politician prepares the ground before they go there. And preparation of the ground means that you send advance parties with small denominations of Kenyan currency, and you ensure that the ground is softened in that way and properly choreographed. And you have your goons who shut down any individual who holds a contrary view. And because of that, quite a number of them are shielded from the reality. But yet, there is so much noise being made in the Kenyan environment that they must know that people are angry.
They must be hearing something.
If they ever doubted it, the dramatization of this anger by the young people in the month of July must and should have sent a chilling message. And for the first time, you could see even the head of state did not leave the country. The head of state sent the finance bill. The parliamentarians were scared. The cabinet ministers were no longer flying their flags. They got it. But somehow, memories are short and selective. That is why we must keep on reminding them. But as I said a little earlier, when a country is hurtling towards its destruction, even when God reasons with the leaders, they think God mad. I fear that we may be in such a state. We have fear. There are politicians in this country who think they are larger than life, almost as large as death. And that is part of our problem. They are insensitive. Even when the truth sits on their laps, telling them, behold, I am the truth, they refuse to listen. And if they do listen, they refuse to hearken.
You know, Prof, if the president called you for a meeting and said, I've received your letter,
Yes.
please come, let's have a cup of tea, let's talk about the issues that you raise.
Yes.
Tell me what to
I'm
do.
sure he'd explain to you and tell you a couple of things. For example, he'd tell you on the issue of CBC and education.
Revolution is the language of the Unheard. That is the one and only PLO Lumumba talking about this issue of bad governance. As he has talked about the issue affecting Kenyans, he has said he has traveled across the city, and while even in taxis, he could converse with people, and people are saying that we are angry. What should we do? Our nation is not going well. There are some issues which are affecting us, which are not being looked upon. But that is now the revolution of the unheard, people who aren't being heard of what they are suggesting. But he went ahead to say that the parliament never speaks of issues which are affecting Kenyans. They rather spend billions of shillings to impeach a deputy president, which is an issue at the moment, and do it being an issue, what is happening then in Kenya. So the Kenyan parliament ought to talk about proper liberation of Kenyans, or for example, the JCC teachers and the doctors, but they are not going to issue these talks. They rather talk about amending things like seed laws, which are going to affect the farmers and many other small-scale people. If this continues, the country is going to pay for it. That's according to Mr. PLO Lumumba, and that's how he's suggesting. It could become worse if it doesn't become better. That's how he put it. So what needs to become better instead of becoming worse might be the contrary of the vice versa. He said that even the big political leaders who have transferred this country, especially the likes of Kalonzo, the Odingas, the big wings who have gone everywhere in the country, it might be that they are getting the message from the people, but they are ignoring it, or the message which they are getting, they are not acting upon it. It's obvious that now in Kenyan space, the politicians are very wise and they know how to prepare the ground in their favor so that they can talk in their favor. The ground is softened through Guinism and having people who have been paid a very small fee so that they can sway the masses in the favor of the politicians. We saw what happened to Morara Kebaso in Bomas of Kenya. It was through Guinism who attacked him because he was having a contrary opinion to what was happening in the Bomas. And suddenly, even the politicians who are moderators could be hand cheering on. And that's what is happening in this country. So the politics of this country is in a way that it might mess you if you don't take care. But when is this the language of Unheard going to continue? When the revolution of the Gen Z happened, it was the language of the Unheard. They came to the state and their opinion was to take away the finance bill, and which is they did, but it might be that the finance bill is coming back in small bits and small bits. For example, look at the agricultural seed laws which are being put in parliament and how they are going to affect small scale farmers. What do you think is going to happen to the country? Why are they making these laws which were deemed very unfair to the small scale farmers? Instead, the parliament needs to be speaking about this, but we are waiting for that motion when it's going to be put there. And you wonder, why is this motion? It was even honored by one of the MPs who comes from a constituency or a region where a majority of the local people are farmers. Look at, in fact, 80% of Kenyans are local stroke small scale farmers who are going to be affected by some of these plans which are being put in place. So that is for today. Make sure you keep it moral TV.